We now present For the Record.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Will Keneally. Later in the program, we remember the legacy of Jimmy Carter with a Wisconsinite who actually had the former president in his own home. We also sit down with a new Dane County lawmaker in the state capitol. But first, we start this week with national news. We are a little bit more than a week from President-elect Donald Trump's second inauguration. And with that marking Republicans capturing unified control of the federal government. Now, for more on what's ahead in Washington, we caught up with 1st District Congressman Brian Stile. We spoke this week during a listening session he held down in Janesville. Thanks for sitting down with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, so new year, new Congress. Any priorities that you're looking to hammer out specifically?
We need to do a lot of things to get our country back on track. The two that are at the absolute forefront are securing the U.S.-Mexico border and financially getting our country back on track and addressing the reckless spending that we've seen in Washington. And if we do that, we can lower costs and secure our communities.
So we saw late last year, very short-term, like one-year extension to the Farm Bill. Do you have any sense of how some of those negotiations might shape up?
The way Washington's operated for way too long has been beyond frustrating. Congress far too often kicks the can down the road. I would love to see us get a substantive farm bill done that gives farmers a sense of security for the coming 5 years. I think we have an opportunity to do that. Congress was unsuccessful during divided government, but I'm hopeful as we look out to this year that we're going to be able to pass a farm bill and give our farmers the security that they deserve.
And as you mentioned, you're no longer in divided government. You have both the Congress and the presidency. How do you think that will shape those interactions there?
I think it gives us a real opportunity to move on some really important legislation. One of the challenges we had in the House while the Senate was under Democratic control is we would often pass good legislation that the Senate wouldn't even bring up for a vote. I look back at the H.R. 2 from last Congress, which was a comprehensive border security legislation. The Senate refused to so much as act on our legislation. This Congress, I'm confident that under the leadership of Republican Senator John Thune, the Senate's going to bring forward our legislation and we can actually work together on absolutely essential provisions, in particular, again, border security and bringing costs down through addressing the reckless spending in Washington.
And you're mentioning off camera that you're heading down to Mar-a-Lago this weekend to meet with the incoming president here. What are some of those discussions looking like?
The president is bringing down the chairman of the House committees. I serve as the chairman of the Committee on Administration, which oversees federal election law. And so it's a real opportunity to sit down with the president and his team and discuss our legislative priorities, and in particular making sure that we're increasing Americans' confidence in our elections. As we think about kind of core provisions, things like photo ID, what can we be doing to make sure that we're securing our elections, that we're increasing Americans' confidence in our elections? I'll be there with the president in Mar-a-Lago discussing not only that, but as well as what the other chairmen have on their plate, everything from taxes to veterans benefits to national security.
We saw again a speakership fight with Speaker Johnson failing that first vote. He's the speaker now. Does that cause any concern, any pause about kind of the cohesion of the Republican caucus in the House?
We have a narrow majority, and anytime you have a narrow majority, it's difficult to get everybody together. As we come out of the Christmas season, I think people spent time hopefully with their families. If you can imagine a family of 220 people who needed to sit down together and reach agreement on one item, how difficult that would be. That's a good way to think about what's playing out in Congress right now. We have 220 Republicans, but they're all individuals with their own ideas, their own suggestions, and at the end of the day, we need 218 votes to get anything done. So sometimes it's going to be a little bit challenging, a little messy. Sometimes I want to pound my head against a brick wall on occasion. But at the end of the day, we're focused on the same things, on getting this country back on track, on securing the border, on addressing reckless spending. And it's that unity that I think at the end of the day will pull us together and allow us to deliver on the mandate that we have from this election.
When we come back, we take you to the state capitol where lawmakers are just getting settled in. We speak with a new state representative from DeForest. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. This past Monday marked the swearing in of new lawmakers at the state capitol. This past election saw a decent amount of turnover, especially here in Dane County. And one of those lawmakers is Maureen McCarville, representing the DeForest area as a Democrat. Now, we spoke with her in her Capitol office about her priorities for the new session. Perfect. Well, thanks for sitting down with us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So I'm always fascinated by lawmakers, going from the county board to now the state assembly. What factored into that decision for you to kind of step up to this next level?
Right. So I enjoy public service. I've done it my whole life, for the most part, my whole adult life. I served on the village board in DeForest. I went from there to, I helped get the police commission up and running back during the census of 2000 when it was determined we needed to have a police commission. And I opted to take a couple of appointments to that rather than stay on the village board. So I took a couple 5-year appointments. And then I ran for county board. Again, I love public service. I like working in groups. I like collaborating. I like finding solutions for problems that are out there. And rather than being frustrated in my kitchen or, over watching the news or whatever, I just feel it's better to jump in and act and try to help figure it out.
So last session we went through that whole shared revenue debate. What's it like to have somebody with that local government experience now in the state legislature?
Right. So I stay in close contact with the local government officials in the area where I live, and I expect I'll do more with that with some of the other communities now that I'm elected to the legislature. So understanding, the pain that they feel with shared revenue and how, residents don't want their taxes to go up, but then also have to constantly explain to them that they're not going to get more money in shared revenue, so the same services are going to cost more, which actually means cutting the services. It's not a status quo kind of thing. So it's kind of feeling like you're repeating the same arguments that are totally true, but having to get the public to understand that. So that's the lift with shared revenue in terms of, trying to get an understanding and make sure that the voters know what's going on.
Yeah. And so for your perspective, what are some of the big priorities? What do you want to get done this session?
Well, I want to get a lot of things done, but I want to look at it from the standpoint of, we have to work together. So I tell people it wasn't just rhetoric at the door. I really do intend to work with folks across the aisle. My staff are here. Her dad is a representative on the Republican side, and we've already had a chat in the office. Met the family and the whole 9 yards. So, let's just take the labels off and let's see what the problems are. And people have told me that when I've campaigned. I've heard that my whole life. I've served on nonpartisan boards until this particular election. And so I'm used to working with people with whatever they regard themselves as. It's like, what's the issue? What's the answer? What solutions can we find? And in my job that I recently retired from, I worked at Madison Gas and Electric for 40 years. I spent about half that time on the union side, and I bargained the labor contracts as chief steward. And then the other 20 some years, I was on the management side, and I bargained the labor contracts on the company side. But the idea is always that, we're all in this together, so we all do better when we all do better. So you bring your concerns to the table, and you're not going to get everything you want, but you're not going to walk away with nothing. So a good bargain is, you make some headway, you give a little, and eventually you can solve some of these problems that seem so monolithic, but actually are, you can whittle them down to manageable and hopefully move on and tackle things as they come up. So.
Have you had any kind of bipartisan cross-aisle discussions aside from that one earlier today? What have the tenor of those been like? So not really yet. I mean, we've looked at some schedules. I do want to work with some folks. I'm served in the Wisconsin National Guard. And I just recently found out I did get assigned to the Vets Committee, so I'm happy about that. And so one thing that I heard from my American Legion post, and then also from folks that have served and myself, is that we're the only state that doesn't recognize veterans as a state holiday. So we need to do that. And I know it's got a long storied history, and I know the governor has put it in his budget in prior years, and it's been taken out. So I think that's something that I know there's agreement on both sides of the aisle. If we can get it over the hump, it shouldn't be a red or blue thing, again, we're all in this together. But if we can do that, I think that could be a nice springboard to jumping into even bigger issues that we have to deal with. So
hopefully we can get that done. And then other issues that vets have, and I have a few notes here, so they can have some access to education opportunities, to housing, and honoring Veterans Day. There's a lot of, as we know, mental health issues out there amongst our veterans, just recently with the things that we've seen, in the media, So those are serious issues, and not just with vets, that's all across society. So we need to deal with those issues, because when there's mental health issues, that leads to other things that, don't have good outcomes, right? So I'm just looking forward to helping there wherever I can. Women's rights, that's huge. Women need to be able to have the privacy to get the health care that they need when they need it, and government really should just kind of keep their nose out of it. So I think we need to keep working towards that end. Education is big. My staffer, again, who I keep dragging into this, used to be a school teacher. So, the Act 10, all of that business, having been on the union side and then being on the management side, it's like, look, folks, you got to talk to each other. It's again, digging your feet in the sand and going, that's my position, and bang the gavel. Well, okay, but that doesn't get anything done. And that is so frustrating to people. That's like, they don't do anything, they talk, So, under promise and over deliver, right? That's what you want to do, right? Don't over promise and don't deliver anything, kind of thing. It's probably not, that's probably not going to happen. But, just keep your pedal on the metal and keep working towards solutions, and keep talking is the biggest thing.
When we come back, our one-on-one interview with former Assembly Speaker and U.S. Ambassador to Norway. Tom Loftus recounts the legacy of Jimmy Carter and the role Wisconsin played in his political trajectory. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. This week, the country remembered former President Jimmy Carter, who lied in state at the U.S. Capitol before being laid to rest in Plains, Georgia. Now, among the people who got to work with him in various capacities, former Assembly Speaker Tom Loftus. Now, Loftus also joined the ranks of Wisconsinites, serving as a European ambassador, working as Bill Clinton's ambassador to Norway. And thanks so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you.
So I want to first ask, many people, you've met him in different capacities, certainly, but when did you first meet the former president?
I met him at the 1976 Democratic presidential primary in Wisconsin. The primary that year was April 6th. I had been working for the Udall campaign, Morris Udall, who was Carter's main competitor. And we met on the campaign trail and shook hands and had a little chat. And that was the first time. That would be April of '76.
So I'm fascinated because you worked for his opponent, right? And so you're kind of, meeting the enemy, so to speak, even though it's all in that Democratic primary. What were your first impressions of him?
Well, a very personal, and I distinguish that from personable. It was very personal. In other words, he made me feel that I was important to him, even though I had spent a year and a half trying to elect Morris Udall. Now, Carter wasn't the opponent until late during that campaign season. He had come in second in Iowa. He had won some southern primaries. He had beat Morris Udall in New Hampshire. But he had some troubles coming up that he was not the favorite to win. So the Wisconsin primary really was the one that sent him on to the nomination. He won by 7,600 votes. And I was on TV that night in Madison declaring him the winner. And past midnight, the farm counties came in and Carter had won in a squeaker.
Yeah, we think elections are close now, but my goodness. And Wisconsin's pretty late in that primary process, right? I can't get over that fact. Reading from some of your book, you had that Dewey defeats Truman moment, essentially, with the Milwaukee paper there. Any fun kind of anecdotes from that campaign, too?
Well, first, I had sunglasses on that night when I was announcing that Morris Udall was the winner, because campaigning that day, I had in my tow a very famous actor, Cliff Robertson. He had just won the Academy Award for his performance in Charlie. And I backed out of a parking lot and opened the door and bent down, and I ran over my glasses. So that night, it must have seemed quite amusing to the viewers. It didn't bother me because we had won. And then we didn't.
So that was back in the 70s. You ran into Carter later again in Norway in the 1990s. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yes, Jimmy Carter came to Norway several times, and we got to know each other quite well. I was his host. That's how it works. A former president comes, you are the host. And we really hit it off. And part of the reason is I'm the former speaker of Wisconsin. He's a former governor. A speaker and a governor have sort of a secret language between them that would have been different between a president and an ambassador. And he was there thanking the Norwegians for the money they had contributed to his disease eradication efforts in Africa, and asking for more. We went to the prime minister, we did all of the courtesy calls, and we went to see the head of the political party, the Christian Democratic Party. They were the chief proponent of foreign humanitarian aid. The head of it was a Lutheran minister, and the three of us had lunch. And Jimmy Carter and Kjell Magne Bondevik was his name, the Lutheran minister, talked the whole time about how to teach Sunday school. It was a wonderful thing to experience. So we spent quite a bit of time together. We talked about a lot. Some things we didn't talk about. One of them was former Wisconsin Governor Patrick Lucey, who Carter named ambassador to Mexico, and Lucey resigned halfway through and went on to support Carter's opponent, Ted Kennedy. And not only that, when Ted Kennedy was unsuccessful, Lucey ran as the vice president on a third-party ticket with John Anderson. So definitely we did not talk about that part of Wisconsin history. There is the fact that when Lucey was appointed by Carter, that changed politics in Wisconsin dramatically. Lucey was at the top of his game. When he left, we lost the next election for governor. That was the time Lee Sherman Dreyfus was elected.
So I'm also curious too, for those, it seems a long time ago, especially in political terms, half a century ago for that 1976 primary. How would you describe Carter, both politically and personally, for those who didn't get to meet him?
Well, calm is a word that comes to mind, and focused. He stayed with us in the ambassador's residence. It's a three-story villa sitting on its own city block, and the guest room has a balcony. And for him and each guest, I would go in with them to the guest room, out on the balcony, and explain how the fire escape system worked. It looked like an aluminum downspout, but you pulled a pin out and it unfolded to a ladder. Well, President Carter's background as an engineer took hold at that point, and he examined that for some time. And he was very interested in what other people had to say. And that's always the path to success, politician or former politician.
Well, Ambassador Loftus, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And we'll be right back after this. Welcome back. Winters in Wisconsin are a all too familiar sight, but they come with some challenges. Now this week, Governor Evers declared an emergency due to the winter storm that recently rocked the East Coast. Now this energy emergency lifts some restrictions placed on industry workers, like truck drivers, for example, to help make sure that the fuel supply keeps going. Now I spoke with Carrie Heinrich, the Wisconsin Public Service Commission's energy security lead, for more on the impact of that emergency declaration.
Related to heating, it tends to be in the winter when we're using a lot more heating fuels. And the supply chain, usually can handle the situation, but this particular situation is related to, widespread heating needs throughout the country in areas that we typically aren't seeing a huge heating demand. And so this is related to propane specifically as well, although home heating fuel is included in the waiver.
That does it for us this week. I'm Will Keneally. Have a great rest of your weekend.
This has been For the Record.